Today, Brazil has two types of quotas: racial quotas, which are based on race, and social quotas, which are based on one's economic status. Currently, most universities employ a combination of both. However, there is a movement to use one or the other. Yet with both systems, there are considerable problems. One of the biggest problems with using a system of racial quotas is the issue of racial identification. In a country that subscribes to the notion of a racial democracy, how does one determine who is black? Well, to resolve this problem, some universities have relied on self-identification, but this has proven to be problematic as well.
Minha menina mesmo, quando foi para a faculdade, me perguntaram se ela, que cor é ela.
Historically speaking, in Brazil, self-identification has been the source of great confusion. Considering Brazil's usage of color classification, the subjective nature of self-identification opens the door for a wide array of responses. But what is more interesting is that oftentimes, one racial classification is preferred over another. Unfortunately, in Brazil, certain racial categories carry negative connotations. Preto or black, for example, is often associated with poverty and ignorance. To be labeled preto in Brazil is virtually an insult. With that, it is very uncommon to find an individual that will be willing to self-identify with this classification. Therefore, if a choice were given, a latter term would almost always be preferred. In fact, one of the most desirable terms to be used is the all-encompassing moreno/morena. Moreno is a term that is not currently used by the census, but is employed by nearly all of Brazil. As it includes individuals from every end of the color spectrum, it is viewed as safe and appealing. The term moreno allows for everyone to fall in the same category, and in a society that promotes the idea of racial harmony, this is a desirable trait. In terms of racial quotas, the phenomenon of racial preference is extremely relevant. With racial quotas, universities would reserve space for black or preto students. But considering the negative implications of these terms, how many individuals would be inclined to identify with these classifications? It's difficult to provide educational opportunities for a group that is hardly defined. Such issues make the usage of self-identification questionable.
Mas é muito complicado, porque tem muitas misturas de raças no Brasil e é muito difícil às vezes determinar quem é afrodescendente e quem não é.
Furthermore, there is also the fear that open-ended applications are vulnerable to exploitation. Many critics believe that with self-identification, there is nothing in place to stop a white student from identifying as black to simply receive admission. With the process hinged on personal interpretation, such a scenario is bound to occur. The flaws of self-identification have been a cause for major concern and in some instances have forced universities to abandon the use of racial quotas altogether. However, in the universities that have chosen to continue with this policy, the question of race is no longer in the hands of its prospective students, but instead in those of a professional panel. Some universities in cities such as Brasilia have attempted to solve the issue of who is black and who is not by relying on a panel of experts. This assembled group receives pictures of the applicant and determines his or her race by examining and analyzing facial features. This system, which calls into question the authority of anthropologists and Afro-Brazilian activists to decide one's racial classification, has been very controversial. In a bizarre event, two identical twins applied to the same university and received two different racial classifications. As a result, one was admitted and the other was not. This account is a clear example of why the use of a panel should be avoided as well. Racial classification is simply a difficult task to tackle in Brazil. However, despite the issue of identifying who is eligible for quotas, many critics are far more concerned with the ability of students to adapt. The second key problem with the use of affirmative action is the issue of preparation. Whether or not it is for racial or economic reasons, various critics have presented the fact that many of the students that would receive quota admission would likely enter the university at a distinct disadvantage. In Brazil, black and or poor students primarily receive a public school education, and as the quality of Brazil's public school is considered to be less than satisfactory, this is a major concern.
Na sua opinião, como é a educação no Brasil?
Fraca.
Fraca.
Principalmente muitas pessoas de escola pública que têm um ensino muito defeituoso.
Sim.
So in essence, with such a weak public school system, how can students from these circumstances compete with those who have been privileged to a private school education? Public schools lack funding and support, and with limited resources, it is nearly impossible to provide adequate materials or offer the kind of salaries that would attract superior teachers. As a result, the students suffer and receive a lackluster education. In direct opposition, private school students have the advantages of computer access, well-trained instructors, and stimulating lessons.
Aqui no Brasil temos o caso de pessoas ricas que têm acesso durante toda a vida a escolas particulares e elas se preparam todo o tempo para depois ocuparem os melhores lugares nas instituições de superior, nas instituições de ensino superior, que são as universidades federais, e ela acaba tomando os espaços que seriam das pessoas que vêm já do processo público de ensino.
In many ways, private school students are prepared to handle the rigors and challenges that university experiences present. Many critics also believe that this preparation is due to the amount of support that certain schools or areas receive from the government.
Situação de bairros diferentes. Nós temos Barra, uma educação, periferia, outra educação, porém aqui acha mais apoio do que na periferia.
The significant discrepancy between the quality of education gained at public and private schools is troubling and in many ways creates an unjust situation. Critics reference the poor quality of public schools to posit the theory that quotas set students up for failure. In their eyes, implementing affirmative action is equivalent to throwing a lamb to the wolves, and furthermore, does these students a great disservice in the future.
Todos teriam os mesmos direitos.
Sim.
E não quando chega lá no fim, uma pessoa despreparada entrar para uma universidade só porque ela é negra.
Sim.
É errado isso. Por quê? Porque depois, quando ela chega no mercado de trabalho, ela vai ter as mesmas dificuldades, porque ela não vai ter condições de competir no mercado de trabalho com as pessoas brancas do mesmo jeito.
Sim.
Então, o interessante é você fazer a coisa, você plantar direito.
Sim.
E não você depois colher fruto mal plantado.
The unequal distribution of resources and knowledge in public and private institutions is a major counter-argument to the implementation of affirmative action in Brazil. And additionally, it is seen as strong evidence for the need to revamp primary schools as opposed to universities.
Então eu acho que deveria primeiro balancear, né, a qualidade do ensino, né? Que os colégios públicos tivessem um ensino bom quanto particular, né?
Então deveria dar igualdade na educação primária.
Sim.
Na primária, sim. As crianças pequenas têm todas as condições iguais às outras.
Sim.
Todos terem direito de ficar no colégio o dia todo, terem direito todos a estudar uma música, todos terem direito a estudar uma dança, todos terem direito a uma ginástica, a uma piscina, entendeu? A natação, todos teriam os mesmos direitos.
The idea of reforming the primary school system is very logical and actually well accepted. However, while I was in Salvador, I did encounter an interesting counterpoint.
As pessoas que discordam têm muito discurso assim: o que se deve utilizar não é a política de cotas, a política de ações afirmativas, mas deve-se sim melhorar o ensino de base, o ensino fundamental e médio. Mas aí eu questiono: vamos melhorar sim o ensino fundamental e de base. E as pessoas que já participaram do processo caótico, onde é que elas ficam? Elas vão ter que voltar de novo quando se melhorar o ensino para estudar tudo novamente para depois ter acesso?
The use of racial quotas in the overall system of affirmative action is controversial. The government is moving away from strictly racial quotas, which many approve.
Agora está mudando um pouco o governo para a questão das cotas para as pessoas que têm um menor poder aquisitivo, ou seja, as pessoas mais pobres, que é o que eu acho mais correto.
Yet at the end of the day, you still have people who simply don't think it's necessary.
Você conhece cotas?
Cotas?
Sim. Na sua universidade?
Sim.
Sim. Então, na sua opinião, o Brasil deve usar cotas?
Eu não acredito nisso. Eu acho que não precisaria disso para que os negros estivessem nas faculdades. Eu acho que eles têm capacidade bastante para estar lá sem cotas.
The truth of the matter is that until more research is conducted, and until these current policies can yield results that can be analyzed in the future, no one truly knows what's best for Brazil. In fact, many concede and admit that yes, quotas are problematic, but at this time, they are also a way of diminishing Brazil's social inequality.
Claro, a medida de cotas, a gente pode pensar assim, é uma medida paliativa. Não vai resolver tudo, mas eu acho que no momento o que se precisa é sim ter a política de cotas para talvez lá na frente, quando se mudar os governantes, Quando se mudar toda essa estrutura, talvez nem precise mais futuramente. Mas eu acho que nesse momento precisa-se sim.
The topic of affirmative action in Brazil is clearly polemic and in many ways splits the nation. However, as seen through the interviews, it is interesting to note that this division often occurred along color lines.
Sim, na sua opinião, o Brasil deve usar cotas?
Puxa, eu acho que não.
Sim.
Não.
Você conhece cotas?
Cotas conheço.
Sim. Então, na sua opinião, o Brasil deve usar cotas?
Deve sim, com certeza. Com certeza.
Sim.
Many of the quote-unquote white Brazilians I interviewed stood against the implementation of quotas, while the majority of the quote-unquote black Brazilians were often for it. Now, granted, Salvador, Bahia is considered an Afrocentric region of Brazil, it is important to recognize that I received all types of responses. Despite my location, the people were still bifurcated. With such division in this city, some should be provoked to think, what would happen if other regions of Brazil with different demographics were surveyed? If this research were conducted, I believe that the results could be quite interesting. My time in Salvador, Bahia revealed so much. It shed light on the city's beautiful culture, its music, and its people. It spoke to the city's hardships, poverty, and desperate need for change. Through my 2-month trip, I learned a tremendous amount about the Brazilian education system, affirmative action, and the ways in which it is presenting problems in Brazil. I confirmed that the policy is not fully supported by the people, and I saw firsthand how Brazil is still in search of answers. The journey towards correcting an historical problem is long and hard, but what I realize is that in the case of Brazil, at least the quest has begun.